Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Robert Thomas, and welcome to all of you who have just connected for this first briefing of HLF Connect 2021. As the video you've just seen highlighted, the HLF is an international network of innovation ecosystems that was set up in 2012 to provide a forum to share and discuss member activities on a wide range of topics, as well as to learn from each other's innovation practices. Last year, in order to increase the level of exchanges between members of the HLF and also to reach beyond our community, we created HLF Connect, a series of interactions between ecosystem players organized within dedicated working groups on key topics of our time. In 2021, we focused HLF Connect on the COVID pandemic and its impact on ecosystem and societal resilience, with the development of COVID-related innovations and new ways of working. This year, we wanted to continue to address the theme of societal resilience, but with a focus on the challenges facing industry. And we also wanted to connect to the theme of our high-level forum summit in November. This year's HLF Summit will focus on the reinvention of industry to support a resilient society. Today, we are pleased to open our discussions with all of you in two sessions that represent the end of a first phase of work to not only understand some of the approaches that each ecosystem is taking, but how we can drive collaboration between HLF members and beyond. 11 organizations of the HLF agreed to respond individually to two main questions on how they are taking action and how they are pooling their skills in favor of this industrial reinvention, while taking into account the needs of our society and the profound transformations that are underway. As Deputy Chair of the HLF, I am pleased to welcome the members of our first working group to this first of two webinars today. Since April, this first working group has focused on technological innovation and its ability to address specific problems that are key to reinventing industry and improving resilience. And we hope it will spur interest and discussion, collaboration among the wider innovation community. Before giving the floor to each of you in turn to make your presentation, I would like to make a round of introductions. I'm very pleased to welcome Greg Morin, who's Director of Strategy at Argonne National Lab in Chicago, United States. Yusuke Mori, who is Director General of the Policy Innovation Department at the city of Scuba in Japan. And also from Scuba, Toshihiko Kaneyama, who is AIST Special Emeritus Advisor. So Toshihiko will be joining us for the roundtable after the presentations. Emily Vyaznov, who is Director of Institutional R&D Programs at CEA. Mia Rolf, who is CEO of Ideon in Lund in Sweden. Brent Jensen, who is Senior Manager Business Development Edmonton Global in Canada. Stephen Su, who is Vice President and General Director of ITRI in Hsinchu in Taiwan. And Benoit Belmana, CEO of IVIO in Montreal, Canada. So welcome to you all. Before giving you the floor shortly to make your presentations, if I could just remind you to keep to the 10 minutes allotted to each of your presentations to give some time for the roundtable afterwards and also to take questions from the audience. Welcome also to the audience. Please feel free to send in your questions for our speakers using the chat. To manage our time, we won't have a Q&A after each of the presentations, but we'll keep your questions till the end. So I do encourage you to make your questions known in the chat as we go along. So for this first presentation, I'd like to ask Greg from Argonne National Lab to kick us off. Greg, your presentation goes, I think, right to the heart of what resilience means in many regions of the world. And obviously, at this current time, we think of North America and some extreme weather conditions. So it's quite timely. So, Greg, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. Good morning from Chicago. Let's see, we'll test the advancing of the slides. There we go. Next slide. Okay, so good morning from Chicago. Thanks for this opportunity to participate in this panel. My name is Greg Bourne, representing the Chicago ecosystem. And before we get to the working group topic, just a few words on my local ecosystem. We have an urban population of 2.7 million with a metropolitan region of close to 10 million. Chicago is a great foundation for its ecosystem with 35 Fortune 500 companies, 2 national laboratories, is one of 4 US cities with 3 Tier 1 research universities, and the #1 most connected airport in the US. So Chicago is well positioned to be a tech leader on a global stage with a burgeoning list of accelerators, incubators, and a committed angel and venture community. I'll say there's many areas for improvement, like all of us have, and even though we're the 3rd largest city in the US, we rank outside the top 5 in many rankings relative to top tier technology ecosystems. So if I had to pick one item we're working really hard on, it would be retaining software and engineering graduates from our local and regional top universities, which is always a challenge. So the issue of building and maintaining a strong STEM pipeline is one that many ecosystems can relate to. Okay, so on to the rest of the talk here. So enabling industry resilience, I'll touch on 3 different areas as you see here. Let's see, just to move to climate risk is increasing. I think that's a fair statement that we can all relate to. Those changes not only impact the weather, but its potential effects on critical infrastructure around the world, right? Patterns of floods, fires, heat waves, and hurricanes are shifting, and forward-thinking companies, right, are taking steps to analyze current and future climate-related risks so they can adapt, improve the resiliency of their infrastructure, and keep critical services up and running. So here in the image on the slide, right, in 2020, there were 22 events with over $1 billion of impact to the US, right? So the average over the last 40 years has been 7 events per year. Over the last 4 years, there's been an average of 16 events per year, which is not good. Here, this chart shows the event history by month, and you see the average with this black line, and then the more recent years, the month-by-month march to billion-dollar events in the US. Extreme weather events provide very distinct examples of how infrastructure can be affected by the environment, right? So here, Hurricane Harvey hit the Houston area as a Category 3 hurricane in 2017, caused $125 billion in damage, which is second only to Hurricane Katrina at $160 billion. They received 60 inches of rain. The highest rate was 7 inches in 1 hour. With 18 locations recording more than 48 inches of rain. Okay, so in South Carolina, which is on the east coast of the US, this is heavy rain from a hurricane that was off the coast, well off the coast. More than 20 inches of rain fell in a 5-day period, causing $12 billion in damage. But from an infrastructure standpoint, right, there were a failure of 49 state regulated dams, 1 federally regulated dam, and 2 sections of a levee let go. So I mean, these are horrific damages to local infrastructure, right? So if we think about the notion that resilience requires information aligned with both scale and the decision type, that could be helpful, right? So in our individual worlds, right, you think from an industry standpoint, you either think in terms of infrastructure at a system or an asset scale, and you're making decisions from a strategic planning standpoint or operational day-to-day decisions, okay? All right, so global climate models, right? So the Earth's climate system is larger than just the atmosphere. So at the global scale, it's influenced by both the atmosphere and the ocean systems, right? With temperature of those systems acting as an indicator of how much energy they have. But climate, particularly at local and regional scales, is also influenced by other elements and processes, things like terrain and topography, vegetation cover, soil moisture, or bodies of water on the Earth's surface. So for example, we experience lake effect snow every winter south of the tall buildings of Chicago. We happen to get, where I live, we get a lot more snow than most areas because of the lake effect of the Great Lakes, right, when it snows. So other regional phenomena around the world are well known, and when they occur consistently over a long time, they define, begin to define climate in that region, right? So the challenge is being able to use these climate system models to help make decisions at the, for industry or at the local level. Okay, so when you think of the evolution of climate models, most, right, provide information on how climate will change over a large area, typically 100 square kilometers or more. Although this can help countries prepare for climate, changes at large, it's not really useful for planning on a regional scale, particularly in a place where weather patterns can change dramatically from, say, one side of a mountain range to another. Additionally, these models don't include data that companies can easily use to assess the effects of climate change on their infrastructure, right? Corporations don't want to know about climate change in the abstract, right? They want to know how it could affect their operations, customers, and the bottom line. So here we see the evolution of the resolution of various climate models. If you look in the upper left image, right, the state of Florida in the lower right is covered by three grid squares. And if you look in the lower right image, right, it's you can't really see on the screen, but there are hundreds of, it's a very fine mesh, right? So the evolution is continuing, right, with these climate models. So one thing that Argonne has done, right, to address this is to develop or project future climate in a 12-kilometer grid across the US, right, in this process called dynamic downscaling. So harnessing the power of our supercomputers, right, our scientists took some of the more accurate global climate models available, and then made them work over a much smaller grid, so that would be more useful for industry and others to make decision. So so now the model, right, is used to determine changes in fine scale meteorological data that will help companies plan for the future, say for for flooding, as we've seen, or California with wildfires, etc. Okay, so using that data to inform decisions, right? You can imagine answering specific questions, right? So when does rainfall lead to flooding? How will future extreme precipitation create local flooding? What will be the peak gust intensity of a 50-year wind event, and say, or how many days will you have above, say, 95 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So then one can imagine having statisticians, environmental modelers, and engineers all collaborating to develop a path forward. So to close here, I lost my slides. Sorry, Robert. Did I do something to?
I don't think you did, but let's, can we get the slides, Greg's slides back up, please?
There we go. Very good. Thank you. And so here on the right, you see it's a 4.3 mile area overlaid with a grid model that shows water depth above 1 foot, right? So you can pick out streets and you see the water depth. So that's a very useful piece of data, right? So this was used in a partnership with AT&T, the telecom company, right? And we provided them with this data, right? And they were able to leverage the model to help with projecting coastal and inland flood risks, right? So future hurricane risks, wind waves, storm surge, and flooding projected, inland. So AT&T created a tool with the data from the laboratory to assess their telecommunication asset management and the required capital planning, for the future. And it was so successful, they actually released the data publicly, which was was impressive for a project like that. So last slide here. So the project was it's not just used for flooding, right? So lots of rain stories here, but also like for wind loads on cell towers, and you can imagine power companies using this as well. So lots of uses for this. It's been a great project, and transitioning climate modeling for use with industry has really been a sort of a successful project for the laboratory. So with that, I thank you for your time and look forward to the discussion.
Thanks very much, Greg. Excellent. I mean, the ability to get down to that level of granularity to make some of these decisions for infrastructure owners is fascinating. Let's switch continents and hear from our friends in Scuba about a couple of different developments, one which actually has some overlap with what Greg's just been talking about. So I'd like to invite Yusuke Mori to give his presentation of some work carried out in the Scuba region by two important national laboratories. Yusuke, the floor is yours.
Thank you for your introduction, Robert. Hello, everyone. My name is Yusuke Mori, and I'm a Director General of the city of Tsukuba in Japan. I'll be talking about how Tsukuba has been working on these themes, which is technology-driven innovation to support the reinventing industry and greater societal resilience. Okay. So first of all, let me quickly introduce outline of Scuba City. Scuba City has continued to develop since the Scuba Science City Construction Plan approved by the Japanese cabinet in 1963. Today, the city has a population of 245,000, of which 10,000 are foreign nationals. That makes Tsukuba a highly diversified area. Also, the city is home to 150 research institutes in the and private sectors, and 20,000 people are engaged in a wide range of research and development activities. Today, I'd like to introduce products, services, application, and system that our two research institutes in Scuba has been developed. One is AIST, or ICE, which stands for National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology, that focuses on the creation and practical realization of technologies useful to Japanese industry and society, and on bridging the gap between innovative technological seeds and commercialization. And the other is NIED, which stands for National Research Institute for Earth Science and Disaster Resilience, that focuses on science for resilience to promote disaster resilience through forecast, prevention, response, and recovery. First example is from AIST. They have been developed AI technology to enable robots to work autonomously in manufacturing environment. If a robot is more agile and flexible, easier to operate and meet more complex tasks in manufacturing processes and other various situations, it will contribute to resilient industry and society by solving problems such as labor force shortage, customers' variable demands, and difficulty of factory workers to work remotely as an avatar. To develop such a robot, there are some problems, such as much time and effort required for pre-design of robot performance and time for waiting during operation for generating action based on visual information. So the point of developed software was streamlining pre-design and acceleration of tasks during operation. Here is the robot performance pre-design phase. First, learning by simulation for picking up of tangled part. Before robots learning, parts can be easily tangled up. But after learning via simulator, it becomes easily picking up tangled part. Second, immediate imitation of human assembly performance with tools. As soon as human performance parts removal operation, robots distinguish parts removal patterns, and makes tasks plans. Robots imitate operation based on visual information. And the application phase is acceleration of visual recognition. When a robot grasps an object, it needs to calculate object position based on images obtained through robot's vision. AIST developed an efficient compression and restoration process based on matrix decomposition of image data, which reduced the calculation time for graph-seeing position detection process up to 1/3. The developed software package and the database are open on our website, so please check further information. Next examples are from NIED. Since the establishment of NIED in 1963, NIED has been responsible for building a framework for disaster risk reduction to all types of natural hazards, including earthquakes, tsunami, volcanic eruptions, torrential rain, and snow. NIED emphasizes that through the various stakeholders and partners involved, disaster risk will be reduced effectively and making society more resilient. The field of science and technology for disaster risk reduction is composed of many academic disciplines and requires the implementation of research outputs in society by various stakeholders. We call information products that catalyze the behavior of each individuals. Now, I'll introduce 3 products. NIED has developed a web GIS system called SolarCheck. Solar means sky in Japanese though, based on the results of research and development in the greater Tokyo area that can superimpose various weather information and infrastructures. When it rains heavily for a short period of time in the greater Tokyo area, the sewage system is not able to treat the rain in time. So there is a need for the development and practical application of detection and prediction technologies. You'll see the examples of how you get the information of rain rate, hail, lightning, wind direction, and speed and snow weight by the system. Second product is digital content of 10 seconds earthquake damage diagnosis. GPS integrated location-based earthquake and infrastructure data can provide a visualized information of damage in 10 seconds. The contents will show the probability that earthquakes happened at your location in 30 years, as well as the time required to restore lifelines such as gas, electricity, and water. By providing the results linked to the user's location information, people can imagine more realistically how they would rebuild their lives after an earthquake, and to think about earthquake preparedness as their own personal matter. Finally, geolysis is a geohazard response via intelligence and sharing based on R&D to understand the disaster damage situation by using drones. Such a quick supporter at an earlier stage will facilitate and accelerate a recovery. In the event of a disaster, rapid and accurate information gathering is very important for decision making. Although drones are beginning to be used in rescue operations at a disaster site to capture images of the damage, the latest technology is still not fully utilized in the disaster response process, and it takes an enormous amount of time to gather the information. NIED has collaborated with a private company to promote the social implementation of disaster situation assessment technology. This is a good example of practical application by the private sector of R&D results that have reached the business phase from the research phase. This is also cooperated with the fire departments and local government as well. That's all for my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Yusuke, thank you very much indeed. Some really interesting examples there. I mean, both from you and Greg in that in the sort of disaster planning areas where this research is really leading to products and to real impact with industry. So that's extremely interesting. And also, your second theme, I think the area of robotics is something that we'll hear about shortly from others. The importance of AI as an enabler, again, I think something that we'll be returning to shortly. So thank you very much for that, Yusuke Mori. The role of data science is something we've all heard a lot about already in this webinar, and I'd like to now move on to a presentation by Emily Vyaznov from CEA about just what we've been hearing about how to master data in a variety of different ways. So Emily, pass the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert, for the kind introduction, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to represent the giant ecosystem and how we try also to reinvent and reshore our industry. Of course, by leveraging the twin transitions, the green transition and the digital transition. And I think my talk could be complementary to that of my colleagues, as you said, Robert, as I will speak about transition, but I would like to focus on data, which is, of course, before speaking about AI, about statistics, etc., data is really the main building block that we need for this digital transition to happen. And we need this to reinvent industry. And we'll see that industrial data is something maybe specific. It's not like personal data. And at the same time, we need these data and this transition to boost competitiveness and sustainability also of our industry. Let's start. No, sorry, can you go? Yeah. So let's start by a short reminder of our ecosystem here in Grenoble. It's, as you might know, it's there is, I can hear some noise in the background. I don't know where it comes from. So it's the giant ecosystem is the second most important regional research center in France, just after Paris. It gathers more than 23,000 researchers together with more than 63,000 students. Within the giant ecosystem, you will find 8 major French or European research labs and infrastructures, including CEA, CNRS, ESRF. I will come back to ESRF specifically at the end of my talk. And all of these research labs and infrastructures are closely working together. And finally, what I would like to highlight in that ecosystem is that we have created now more than 500 startups since the beginning, since 20,000. So let's jump into the topic of reinventing the industry. And as I said, reinventing industry needs to leverage transitions. It's not a continuum of what we were doing before. I think the pandemic shows us that we need some innovation, we need to foster transitions, and we need to leverage transitions also to reinvent and reshore our industry. And I would like to stress that the twin transitions of digital and green or sustainability are already strongly anchored within our giant ecosystem, and we can see it in the first table here, up there on the slide, where it is shown the 5 structural research axes of the giant ecosystem. And you see that at least 3 of them are about these twin transitions. So we can really say that these twin transitions form the key elements of the giant's approach to help the reinvention of our industry. And why do these twin transitions play a key role on how we reinvent industry? Well, in the giant ecosystem, we have quite a long history on these axes. In the digital arena, the giant ecosystem, altogether research partners, industrial partners, and startups have long been associated with the trend in frugality. Well, in the past, we did not speak a lot about frugality. We more spoke about low power solutions, but it's really this frugality or low power solution, it's really in our DNA. And there are several examples of technologies that have been developed targeting frugality or low power or high efficiency. And for instance, I can take the example of the famous SOI wafer technology, which leads to FD SOI, and that are now industrialized by both Soitec and ST Microelectronics. And these 2 technologies, wafer plus the transistor technologies, are really today at the forefront of the low power microelectronics. For example, to support the low power communications for the IoT. And then we have also major developments in the field of the high bandgap semiconductors for power efficiency, so gallium nitride, silicon carbide, or we have also several developments on ultra low power sensors, on highly efficient displays, etc. We have within the giant ecosystem really a long history of developing technologies that are quite low power. And so there is, I just wanted to highlight that there is a specificity in the way we are dealing with this digital transition here in Grenoble. It's because we are really targeting this digital transition, but also with a kind of frugality, sustainability approach that is combined to that evolution. And then if I come back to the digital transition itself, I said what is at the root of the digital transition is really data. And today I would like to focus specifically on data, and even more specifically on industrial data. As I said at the beginning, it's quite different from personal data in the way we have to collect this kind of data, to transport this kind of data, and to analyze. And I would like really to show how mastering that kind of data for industry, let's say, and not only can support industry invention through complete digitalization, but also can improve industrial and societal resilience. And so let me describe how we can, in general, and then I will take 2 examples of how we can master these industrial data. So let's start by what we would like to do with industrial data. So the problem is that to master these industrial data, we need data. So we have first to collect most of the data by improving machine automation, by improving process control, and by digitizing process control, by using robotics, and this has been said just before. We also need to analyze this kind of data by using machine learning, for instance, to optimize processes, maintenance, efficiencies. And then once we have this data and we are able to analyze, we can use this data to offer new value-added data-driven services to our customers. And how to do this? Of course, the cloud is a key element to analyze, to collect, to store all this data. But today, of course, 80% of our data are in the cloud, whereas in 10 years from now, 80% of the overall data will be at the edge. And this is because the cloud has some limitations. For example, dealing with low latency, dealing with real-time process that we need for industrial data, dealing with end-to-end security, because industrial data also have some secret know-how within. Dealing also with frugality is something probably the cloud is not able to do. And what we see on the scheme on the right of the slide is that regarding to industrial data, we need probably a combination of cloud solutions that are existing today, of private cloud solutions, and probably also a lot of local collection and analysis of data. And really implementing this type of vision to master the industrial data is very challenging, and we will see just why in the next slide. So there are specific industry challenges to reach this continuum of data from the edge to the cloud, and we can highlight at least 4 of these challenges. First is that we really need an architecture that will be able to draw this continuum from the edge to the cloud, which means that we need to develop an architecture for a data continuum with the storage processing in the cloud, locally or in between, depending on the type of the data we want to master. And the challenge here is obviously how we can implement frugal, also high-performance edge computing and storage combined with the cloud solutions. And for instance, we are working with Calray, which is a CA startup, on specific new processors to handle that kind of challenge. The second challenge is this end-to-end security. Because we're speaking of industrial data, of course, and because they often include specific know-how, manufacturing secrets, we need to take care of the security of this data. And as an example, we are using homomorphic encryption today that could allow, for instance, computation, analysis on encrypted data. And of course, a third challenge is that many tools and platforms exist today to master data in the cloud. However, on the other end, at the edge side, there are very few platforms that provide solutions to master data at the edge, and there is no platform that is today drawing this continuum from edge to cloud. So we have to assist enterprises with tools and innovation to create this optimum data continuum. And last but not least, as I said, during this digital transition, we have of course, to take care about frugality, and because digital today accounts for already 4% of the global greenhouse gas emission. In 10 years from now, this number will be as high as 25%, which is almost unbearable for our planet. So minimizing the global energy footprint of digitization is really a huge challenge. And by doing also this continuum from the edge to the cloud, we can probably try to optimize the architecture of the infrastructures toward low energy infrastructure. Maybe, so that was the concept, and maybe if I take 2 short examples just to give you some insight on how we could handle this kind of data. So let me start first with an example on additive manufacturing. So additive manufacturing is finally moving into quite volume production in some markets that are very important in Europe, such as aerospace and automotive. And of course, additive manufacturing is an opportunity for industry reinvention and reshoring. But there is a lot of challenge for this for the industrialization of additive manufacturing. And one of these challenges is how to create certifiable metal parts. And for this, one of the keys is digitization and how you control the entire digital value chain of additive manufacturing from end to end, meaning how you digitize the design, how you digitize or how you follow the primary materials that you are using, how you digitize the whole process, so that in the end, you end up with an additive manufacturing process that is highly efficient and that you can certify in the end. So we are working on such kind of project. We are trying to implement in situ instrumentation on additive manufacturing line, adding some artificial intelligence method to analyze our data. And what's the challenge here? It's really in the end to get a real-time feedback on the process, so that you can adapt the process while it's ongoing. And if we succeed, it should end up in 2023 by the first industrial solution which will be certified.
Emily, if you could just bring the presentation to a close.
Yeah, I'm almost at the end. So my last slide is about it's just to a short focus on research infrastructures, because mastering data is not only important for industry, but it's also important for the whole ecosystem, including research infrastructures. And I just wanted here to highlight the example of what ESRF is doing. So they have upgraded their lines somehow, and this results in more complex data sets and faster data collection. So therefore, they also, as a research infrastructure, has a need for more high throughput pipelines as well. So it's not this question of mastering data is not a quick key question for is not only a quick question for industry, but it's also for us, for our research infrastructures, and maybe using the same concept of having a continuum from edge to cloud about data. We should also have this continuum of between research and industry also for our data. And that brings me to my conclusion, which is more or less the main takeaways and the summary of what I've just presented. So I can just end here, and thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, Emily. I think this area of frugality, like, as you said, we used to just call it low power, but I think the more societal issues around digital frugality in terms of energy use is clearly an important area, and is something I'm sure we'll return to in our roundtable. So thank you for that. Let's stay with the data theme. We're going to move on to two more presentations that also look at data. So as Emily was saying, data, mastering data, gathering data, very much the starting point of a lot of the work we've heard of this afternoon. And then we need to treat that data, as Greg was talking about, using data then to inform decision making. So the first of these presentations is from the Lund ecosystem, and I would now like to invite Mia Rolf to make her presentation. Mia, over to you.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone, and I completely agree with Emily that there are a lot of challenges, but that there's also a lot of opportunities. And I'd like to start with just presenting Ideon Science Park, which I am the CEO of until end of July or mid-July. And then Lotta Westfeldt, that you all know, will take over as interim CEO. The Ideon is part of the Lund ecosystem in Sweden, south of Sweden, close to Copenhagen. We are, also include Science Village, Medical Village, two other science parks, and Lund City and Lund University in this in this ecosystem. We call it the Lund Innovation District since a while ago. The IDEON has been around since 1983, and we have signed the UN Global Compact Agreement in 2019, and try to work just as the GIANT and CAA towards the global agenda, of course, and maybe the rest of you. Today we are at 405 companies, last I checked, and about 10,000 employees in the area. We have mainly we are working with the 4 focus areas: smart cities, future transportation, health tech, and smart material. And through all these goes, of course, a lot of digitalization, energy, green energy, and a lot of data. So I just want to go back to when we were in Lund. Many of you, we really enjoyed it, and we actually tried to talk about, gather to talk about how can we make a global understanding of the use of data and the security around it. And I remember that I said we expected to be talking a lot about data, but in the end we talked about decision making, the human processes around having so much data and the risks with that. So I really value that we are now targeting down on more on this topic. And I just want to say that there are a few technologies that we are already grateful for using. I mean, having the broadband and the transmission network 5G and soon to be 6G makes it possible to transmission a lot of data, much more data than before. We're also having an almost flat rate, at least in Europe. So the cost is not an issue anymore. It's super speed, and we can store 80% in the cloud, that, as Emily said. And of course, the sensor technology is booming. We can have sensors in everything, and they're smaller and more energy smart than ever before. So we can produce data from anything that we have in the manufacturing industry, in our everyday life, how many steps we take, what we eat, everything, who we communicate with. So imagine that data for the whole world, including climate data, and why not solar storm data that we also can gather in that. So I think that I just want to give you a picture of it could be feeling like we're drowning in this data, because how do we understand all this data, and how do we make the most of it? And there are also so many other technologies that using AI could really help us more than they actually do today. So we have solutions that could be used in helping the industry with the manufacturing processes. The transportation could be more or less automatic and self-driven. The healthcare could be so much more efficient if we really used all the data that we store. And then all the decision making. I mean, why didn't we use each other when the COVID-19 came and compared before we made decisions on each market alone, like we've talked about before? So my question is really, are we really drowning in data and all this knowledge, or are we a little bit stuck with our own fear of losing control? Many of the industries, like healthcare system or even manufacturing on SME level or up, they could be using the data streams and the AI for decision making or controlling and learning how to make it better and more efficient. But they're actually, I would say that it's us as human beings or decision makers that hesitate of letting go of the control, which is an interesting thought, I think. Having said that, I just want to mention some technologies that we have in our ecosystem that really uses AI to speeding up automation and decision. We have Cellovision and Cicada Health that are using AI to moving from care to prevention. So with Cellovision, you can digitalize the finding of cancer cells. And with Cicada Health, you can actually predict who that had child cancer as a child, but then survive that and probably will get problems in the future. You can see that from the data, and you can use that to work with prevention. You have Cognibotics that are calibrating the robotics of the manufacturing floor to learn and how to cooperate better with human beings, and also how to calibrate better and better with the different decisions that they have to take to make the manufacturing more efficient. You have AdRapid that actually transform the advertising industry into an automated creation of advertising in all types of media. So that's a whole group of people, employment that could be in danger. If that turns out to be a hit. You have BrainLit that is moving from standard light to individual health preventive lighting in different times of the day even. So it's really controlling how well you are staying well. We have Safeture that are using data from all over the world, including analysis centers across the globe, to instead of reacting to a disaster, preventing that there are so many people moving in this area, and with our data that we have, we can see that there's probably an earthquake or something, weather, climate disaster going on. Let's take out all our employees out of that area, and that's a preventive decision-making tool and safety tool, of course. So what I would like to say is many of the invention that uses AI is already here. They're already here, but I think the main challenge is that it's not being implemented fast enough, and that it's still people making decisions. And I think we can discuss that. Is that good or bad in the after discussion? There are, however, a possibility for us as being global ecosystems and connected to each other to cooperate, to support the decision-making processes, to make this decision-making people more secure and well informed in their decisions. And we could produce, for instance, we could benchmark different solutions like we do here, have conferences on this. We could also create global reports on best use cases and best implementation strategies. We could also start global test, since data is everywhere and we're all connected, we could actually have global test beds or living labs that could produce more well-informed decision information. And I think it's interesting to have that thought. And in Sweden, we have some initiatives that could be of interest. We have the AI of Sweden that tries to gather all the AI initiatives in Sweden and compare them. We could connect to that. Ignite Sweden is actually running around with large organizations or public organizations needs to find innovations that matches those needs. Also a great solution that we could copy and use globally. And we are part of Sweden ICT, which connects the 6 big science parks in Sweden. And we are trying to teach the SMEs how to utilize the technology that is already here more. So that's my ideas of how to work. And of course, if we are brave enough to leave more decisions to AI, I think the question of ethics and regulations that are globally accepted, of course, is one way to go, and we could actually work on that together. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mia. Very, very interesting, and I think it actually tees up our next presentation very well, because I think you've mentioned a number of applications area that we heard from Yasuki, from Emily, and also from Brent. So I'd like to hand the floor over to Brent, who's going to tell us about expertise in AI in the Edmonton region and some specific impacts in the healthcare area. Brent, over to you.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Brent Jensen. I am with Edmonton Global. I'm the Director of Business Development here. I join you from our offices this morning. Luckily, our vaccination rates are coming up. We're at about 72% right now, so things are starting to open up. We look forward to seeing you in person next time, of course. The Edmonton region is about 1.4 million people, and Edmonton Global doesn't just represent Edmonton proper. We represent 15 municipalities, which gives us a really unique opportunity to take and analyze opportunities in agriculture, health and life sciences, energy, and advanced manufacturing. And that's all underpinned by AI and high technology. Now, when it comes to AI, the Edmonton region is extremely proud of our AI ecosystem. You see here that the University of Alberta is actually ranked #3 in the global rankings for AI research. And we actually have the #1 computing science department in Canada. Although AI is something that it's sexy now and everybody's talking about it right now, we've long been working in this region for decades. Actually, Canada is one of the regions that began a pan-Canadian strategy on AI. We're the first country to institute this. So we have 3 centers of excellence throughout Canada, one in Montreal called Mila, one in Toronto called Vector, and here it's the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, which includes 100+ Masters of Science, PhD, and postdocs, works with multinationals around the world, some of them seen in the logos there. Now, when we talk about AI, I said I was going to get into health, but AI and gaming has intrinsically been tied together. I don't think you can look at one without looking at the other. Mia talked about decision-making process, and much of that decision-making process, or the basics of it, has been analyzed through games. Google DeepMind CEO says the University of Alberta is the spiritual home and birthplace of games and AI. And really, if we look at the history, it is. Going back to 1994, Dr. Jonathan Schaefer, a good friend of ours, actually solved checkers. 97, the team here at the University of Alberta was part of solving chess. If we flip forward, probably the most notable and the most widespread was through Google DeepMind here, where AlphaGo beats the world champion Lee Sedol. Now that was really pivotal for Edmonton. Shortly after that, Google DeepMind opened their the first office outside of the UK here into Edmonton and started really doing some deep analytics and machine learning here. Dimi goes on to say, virtual environments and games, we think they're the perfect platform for developing and testing AI algorithms. Now, all of these games work in what we consider perfect data. That is, you're sitting across from an opponent and you can see exactly what that opponent does, and then you can interpret that information and make a decision. Now, where we think it really gets interesting is in 2007, Dr. Michael Bowling led up a team here that defeats heads-up no-limit poker. Now, poker is what we consider imperfect information, or that is, you only know the cards in front of you. You don't know the information from your opponent. You don't know what cards are in his hand, and you definitely don't know what cards are in the stack. You can make some inferences. In person, when you're playing that game, there's some tells. You can see facial expressions, or you can say try to identify whether or not someone's bluffing. But that is, them going through and defeating heads-up no-limit poker was a series of playing millions and millions of small poker games in order to work out statistics and beat no-limits poker. So it was really quite revolutionary. If we look at our everyday lives and the systems in which we work, mostly as Mia said, we're really bad at making decisions, and that's because we have imperfect information and we can't put ourselves ahead in time. The immediate applications of solving no-limit pokers include strategic defense planning, negotiation, financial management, and most definitely health AI and robust medical treatment recommendations. And now, medicine is something that, of course, through COVID has been really, really controversial. Governments are strapped. There's budgets are what governments consider out of control. But the growth in the health AI market in the future is projected to grow from $9 billion in 2020 to almost $170 billion in 2030. Now, when we talk about data and privacy of data, we see that through COVID, some of those concerns are being lifted a little bit. There's great potential here. And with that great potential comes again, another analysis on what data looks like. Here in the Edmonton region, we have an organization called Health City. Now, Health City is, their role is to help pave the way for the transformation of our health economy. In Alberta, we also have an organization called Alberta Health Services, which is in Canada, the largest single healthcare provider for populations within a province. So Alberta Health Services carries data for 4.5 million users, the population of Alberta. With those users, we have a lot of data. Our population is quite diverse. 50-50 for gender. We have about 26% of the population which are ethnic minorities, and a whole lot of them, 22%, are immigrants into the region. Health City has partnered with Merck, with government enterprises, and with the U of A to help develop a complex synthetic data set that's secure and wipes out all personal information. And that's what we're going to market with in order to identify new solutions in healthcare. If we look at the AI subsector breakdown, now docs kind of work in patient care, which is 54%. That's when you're going in, you're going to see a doc or a health professional. 15% is healthcare management. Again, you have a direct interaction with the doc. Now, R&D and medical imaging and diagnosis, we can take docs out of the equation there a little bit, and those are solutions that are coming up and adopted really, really quickly. That's the uploading of medical images, for example, and utilizing AI to identify tumors and cancers. When it comes to docs, we feel like one of the largest barriers is that docs are extremely professional. They take care of their patients. Recent survey shows that only 20% of physicians say that AI has changed the way that they practice medicine. Many of them are threatened by AI-powered software in their practices. They lean more towards voice-controlled clinical support, but they also, seems like they don't trust private enterprises. We feel like physicians are the real gatekeepers for implementation of AI in order to improve healthcare pathways and patient outcomes. We feel that future enablers to help, although we're on a great trajectory, and yes, COVID is absolutely horrible, but it is propelled forward the way that we implement AI and data in order to combat disease. We feel that future and increased government funding mechanisms for AI implementation and development are absolutely necessary. Increased involvement in healthcare professionals to ensure buy-in, bring healthcare professionals in. If a healthcare professional doesn't understand why an AI is making a decision, they're not going to be able to utilize that AI. Further to that, an AI can only take it so far. An AI will help to guide a decision, not to make a decision. And finally, utilize transparency model all the way from research and development to implementation. And I look forward to our overall discussion to discuss more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brent. And let's, so anyway, as you were saying, AI clearly becoming an important tool in the medical area, and I'm sure we'll return to that in later discussions. And we'd now like to hear from a region that's been in the avant-garde of both industry automation that we've heard a lot about already, and about the need to reinvent itself. And I think Stephen Su from Sinchu from ITRI will now talk to us about developing resilient industry eco chains in Taiwan. I actually cannot see Stephen for the moment. Stephen, are you with us? Okay, maybe we should head on to another presentation while we wait for Stephen to come back. So why don't we move on to another presentation? So I think when we think about industry reinvention, if we think about the challenges of societal resilience, then I'm sure you'd agree that transportation, electrification of transportation, comes very high up on the list. And I see Stephen. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yes.
hear you. You're back with us. So
yeah, I experienced a little bit internet disconnection here.
Okay, no problem. So I was just saying, Taiwan has obviously been at the avant-garde of both industry automation and also the need to reinvent itself. And so, Stephen, you'll be talking to us about building resilient industry eco chains in Taiwan. Over to you. Okay, so our internet connection into Taiwan is not super resilient at the moment. So let's move on to Benoit Balmana. So as I was saying, I think if we think about an industry, we think about Tesla, we think about what's going on with electrification, about greenhouse gases, transportation, a major issue as a segment for looking at industry reinvention. So we're going to hear from Benoit Balmana, who's going to talk to us about developing a local and complete value chain for electric transportation. Over to you, Benoit.
Thank you, Robert. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be with you today and to talk about what we are doing there in Montreal area, Quebec province, and Canada about electric transportation. So just a quick reminder on our ecosystem. Maybe some of you were in Montreal a few years ago when we welcomed the HLF, when times where we were able to meet each other. So maybe you remember your Montreal voyage with us a few years ago. So we mainly have an ecosystem dedicated to smart mobility. And we have an original approach where we are mainly focusing on the experimentation and the pilot project that we lead between startups, SMEs, research centers, and living labs such as all the cities. We are more than the 35 cities that are working with us to test in a real environment a new solution on a smart mobility. And we also we are working very hard on sharing the result of the pilot project that we are doing to be sure that we can promote and deploy deeply new solution on the market. So we have a complete ecosystem dedicated to this experimentation. So as Robert said, when we look to our ecosystem and smart mobility, maybe you all know that transportation is one of the main issue regarding greenhouse emission, and especially in Quebec, where we have green electricity. So transportation is the first industry providing the greenhouse emission with more than 40%. And we also have a strong manufacturing expertise in specialized vehicles that we want to build on. And we have different policies ongoing. For example, we won't be able to sell new petrol-based vehicles in 2035. So we have, I think, quite good opportunities for our ecosystem. But now the challenge for us is to see how we can accelerate the transition to electrical vehicles. So of course, for decreasing the greenhouse emission, but also because, as I said, we have a strong industry in these sectors. So we think that if we accelerate this transition, we will be able also to create economic development. So that's the question we have, how to accelerate this transition, and mainly talking about the whole value chain and the end-to-end value chain. So what we did, we made a kind of a step back and a kind of market study to analyze the trends on smart mobility market. And you won't be surprised. We can see very well on the slide because it's too small. But I will describe the two charts we can have on the screen. First, on the left, it's a quite basic slide showing the ramp up of electrical vehicles on the market until 2030. So of course, electric vehicles is more and more the new type of vehicles that will be sold and it will be used. So there is no surprise there. And on the right chart, you can see the needs for battery to provide to this manufacturing. To the manufacturers to provide those vehicles, they will need the batteries. So there is a good pressure and a big pressure on the batteries manufacturing. So we continue our market analysis and we looked about the production capacity of those batteries. And what you can see on the slide in yellow, you can see the lowest expectation for the production capacities, and on the top of the chart, on the white bar, you can see the upper expectation for production capacity. So there is a lot of gap between the lowest projection and the highest, but the line in green is the current production capacities. And on the right, you can see the production capacities in 2030. And what you can see is that the green line is under the lowest expectation for production capacity. So in the worst case, we won't be able to have the capacities. But if you look to the white chart, you can see that we are very far from the capacities that will be needed on the market. So that can be a great opportunity for production capacities, but for our point of view, it's also a risk. Because our manufacturing value chain will need those capacities, and maybe we will face a lack of capacities, and without batteries, we won't be able to manufacture the cars that we have in our industry. So that's the main risk that we identified. So in the step 2 approach, we look to our value chain in Quebec, and we talked earlier about the end-to-end value chain in different presentation, and it's what we try also to have in Quebec for electrical transportation. So we can see on the chart the full value chain from raw materials and mining industry to end-of-life batteries and recycling batteries. And if you look, we can see the name there, but you can see that on the mining, on the left of the value chain and on the right of the value chain, there is a lot of name under the chart. So we can see that in Quebec, we have all the strengths to work from mining and for industrial manufacturing, and also for we are starting a lot of research on recycling, and we have a promising industry on the recycling and reusing battery. So on the both side of the value chain, we think we have all the players that can be involved, but you can see in the middle of the value chain we are missing players, and that's what we are going to talk about. Also, if we look to the mining industry, maybe some of you knows Quebec, you know that we have a large province with a north with a lot of mining industry, but today all the raw materials we are getting manufacturing is sales abroad, and we are not using our own raw materials on our local market. So we need, even if we have the mining expertise and industry, we have to involve them in our local value chain. So when what we did after this study is really to build a strategy to attract players to complete our value chain, and mainly in the production, in the battery production capacities, which we can provide with our own raw materials. So a very local value chain that we can create. And you will see on the next slide that we need a lot of investment to do that, but our government is pushing on this strategy, but we need to attract players on that. Also, in terms of research and development, we need to still work on the recycling of the batteries. But as I said, we already have promising startups and PME SMEs working on that. So we're still open for collaboration to increase this recycling expertise. But I think we have good opportunities there. So as I said, now to complete this value chain, the Quebec government push a lot on investment. You can see there on this article, they're talking about 1 billion investment, but if you read carefully, you will see on the article that we are more talking about 7 billion of investment. So we are really pushing to attract new partners to complete this battery production. Otherwise, maybe we will face a problem and shortage maybe on this kind of product that are key for the manufacturing of electric vehicle. So we are looking for partners. So please don't feel free to contact me. But we also are able to provide you also some expertise and knowledge, mainly, as I said, in the field of the recycling scenes. We have a lot of development there. We will be happy to share collaboration on that. And also we will be happy to share experience in our ecosystem based on the experimentation. I think we have learned a lot doing those kind of experimentation with municipalities and real environment testing. So we will be happy also to share that. So I think I'm over with that, Robert.
Thank you very much, Benoit. I think you've at the end there, you've gone to the heart of what we're trying to do with HLF Connect, and to connect ecosystems to one another. So a call for collaboration, what you're missing, what you would like to, what expertise you'd like to get from outside, what you could offer to others is very much in the scope of what we'd like to talk about. So thanks for doing that immediately, Benoit. I'd like to go to our final speaker. So Stephen, over to you to talk about building resilient industry eco-chains in Taiwan.
All right. Thanks, Robert. Sorry about the disconnection back then. Again, my name is Stephen, representing ITRI, which is an applied technology research institute situated in Hsinchu city of Taiwan. Hsinchu has about less than 1 million population, but the science and technology park there houses, for example, TSMC and other high-tech companies over there actually produce over 70% of Taiwan's manufacturing production. And the way that I shift my title as eco-chains is because that we are used to talking about supply chains, talking about ecosystems. We just sort of combine both of them together. So the situation for Taiwan in terms of the global challenges are fourfold. Obviously, we know about this geopolitical issues between US, China, and other regions in the world, and Taiwan is at the heart of it. So last year, we actually had quite a bit of offshore Taiwanese companies came back to Taiwan and invested heavily, but because they went offshore for some reasons before, such as labor costs and also supply of labor, and obviously when they came back to Taiwan, some of the topics that you all have talked about, AI assisted, etc., all become more relevant. In terms of the pandemic risk control, obviously Taiwan was doing well last year. We suffered a bit more this past May, and looks like it's a bit under control as of in later June. But as this pandemic will not go away for quite some time, so obviously this is one of the key issues. And the bottom one, this digital technology everybody has talked about, I think I don't have to address more, but it's local employment pressure. And I think not only that we look for adoption of this digital technology, but some of the, for example, the digital technology's impact on labor force will play a major factor. So for in Taiwan, probably the AI assisted type of system will be more favorable than, for example, AI replacing all employment, for example. Let's see if I could go to the next page. Yes. But for Taiwan's ecosystem, the more challenges is some of these business operations have on small and medium companies. I have highlighted 4 areas that is more critical for Taiwan's small and medium enterprises, which account for more than 97% of the companies. So for example, the digital tools such as AI talents, quite a bit of those go to market leaders like TSMC and just a few hands of big companies. So even ICT companies will suffer this shortage of talent, let alone small and medium enterprises, particularly in the service sector. Then for decentralized manufacturing, cybersecurity is an issue, and ability to have factories all over the world could be more challenging for SMEs. I talk about using AI would be difficult, and also some of the, for example, we have a strong semiconductors, but the some of the advanced equipment manufacturers as well as materials come from Europe, US, and Japan. So in the future, I think that there will be more collaboration called for in this decentralized manufacturing systems. Through last year, Taiwan was lucky to have some growth in the manufacturing sector. And even this year, we have seen 2 months of setback in terms of pandemic control. But all in all, we do not have a major disruption with the manufacturing sector. So we are still seeing some strong growth this year. Particularly, it's because that in Taiwan, some of the technology like hidden champions, we have quite a bit. And also we work as one big cluster, which I will show in the later slide. A snapshot of Taiwan's manufacturing sectors in terms of the domain. The y-axis is the OECD's value add a percentage. The x-axis is the investment in terms of the production value. As you could see that the ICT plus the
Stephen, we've lost you for a second, or at least I've lost you. I think your mic may be muted. I'm not sure if there's any way to can somebody unmute Stephen's mic from remotely, or? I'm afraid we can't hear you for the moment, Stephen. So we're trying to just unmute your microphone, and if not, we'll
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we are. Great.
Okay. I don't know what happened. I didn't touch anything. No, I would speed up a little bit. So you could see that the high value add with the ICT and semiconductor are very concentrated, but that's also an advantage and also a disadvantage to the rest of the manufacturing sector in Taiwan. And I talked about this a little bit last year, but basically that we envision the resilient industry eco chain will be made of some of the components, such as fulfilling the industry needs. For example, during the pandemic, we need to have zero-touch operations and uninterrupted operations, such as body. And when we move to decentralized manufacturing system, how can the brain and the hands and feet will connect together? So all in all, these key characteristics are high survival, high resilience, like bamboo, and also high agility, and lastly, the value to the headquarters or the parent company will be key to the future design of resilient industry eco chains. I just want to use 3 examples to highlight what it means to be an eco chain manufacturing in Taiwan. And the first one, the textile TIC, is a $20 million company, really small. The second one, next industrial computer, is about $200 million in revenue. The last one, TSMC, is about $46 billion in revenues. So the first example that you could see TIC at the bottom, that is doing the apparel and clothing. But the rest of the Taiwan industry, including the purple text, that are the foreign companies, some Japanese, some US companies, European companies, are participating heavily in this ecosystem in Taiwan. And you could see on the right side the key innovators. I won't touch the details, but you could see that through AI and some of the really down-to-earth automation improve some of the processes. So at the end, TIC, this $20 million company, is able to put intelligence into their looms and also design operation with some help from each supplying AI tools for them. And the next one, this next one in the middle is a $200 million company. Again, it works with some of the ICT companies like Acer and ASUS. And the key innovators on the right, each also helps with the automation, as well as helping them integrate OT and IT together. And obviously, that as they get into the 5G area for their customer, they are able to adapt AI for training, for example. And lastly, TSMC, I think this example you know all pretty well. Just want to highlight that for TSMC in the middle, you could see ASML, Lam, and also Micron, and they all participate heavily in Taiwan. And this together is one of the key eco chains in Taiwan. So last 2 slides that for global collaboration, RFG Semiconductor is the backbone for Taiwan, but they are smart manufacturing, electrical vehicles, for example, the key electronic components, personal health, and lastly, circular economy. Later, that will eventually become the net zero. Those are all good topics for this global collaboration. And lastly, just want to talk about one example that we have done with the UK, that both their government and our government actually work together, map out, for example, the biomedical devices to look at where that we could collaborate in terms of this eco chain. And the example that we have with the Imperial College of London is actually they have a startup robotic arm company that likes one of the sort of like inside the skull navigation software, and we'll both team up together through government subsidies on both sides, working hand in hand. And I think that is an integration example for future collaboration. And that's all for my sharing.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you very much to you all for your presentations. We're now going to go into the roundtable. I'd like to actually maybe start with you, Stephen, briefly. There's a couple of things you mentioned there about particular challenges for SMEs, and I know that that's addressing SMEs, and maybe I think that's Emily is also something I know at CEA is also an issue. And if we think about resilient economies, how we can address the SME community is an important one. Stephen, from a Taiwan perspective, what are there any lessons you've learned about SME resilience and how you can help them particularly?
Okay, I'd like to start with one example that a few panelists have mentioned about data and AI, and I just talk about it's very hard for 97% of the Taiwanese companies to recruit AI talents in-house. So last year through the pandemic, we have some subsidies going to, for example, like startups and also the SMEs. But honestly speaking, some of the startups, the government subsidies are actually larger than their revenues because they are working on new products. They need customers. So this year that we have started a program such that we aim to target roughly about 15,000 companies of SMEs, a small number, but still very large in terms of the subsidy we are able to provide to them. But in terms of, instead of giving subsidies to them, we actually qualify about 150 to 200 solution providers. Many of those are startups, many of those are AI solution providers to help them. So the government subsidy do not go to the SMEs directly, but we try to find customers through this triangle type of arrangement. And that's a way that we try to help this digital transformation, even through the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Who would else like to pick up on that idea of the challenges facing SMEs? Again, some of the expertise in terms of whether it's AI skills or other skills in digital transformation. Benoit.
Yeah, just a comment, because when I heard all the presentation, I can see like a kind of paradox in what we are saying, because when we talk about resilience, we look locally. So it seems that we need to have all the skills and the expertise locally to be able to be resilient and to have the famous end-to-end value chain. And Stephen just said also that we need talents, we need technologies. And I think and for Quebec, it's the case. It's impossible to have all the skills to be resilient and to have an end-to-end solution in each market. So that's talk about. Do you hear me? Yeah. Yep. Do you hear me? Yep.
Yeah, we hear you.
So I said that I see this paradox, because some of you talk about reshoring also. So we need to attract, but also we need to keep our strengths to be sure that we'll be resilient. So that's just a comment about the paradox I can see there, that we also compete each other, but we need to collaborate, and we won't be able to have all the strengths in the same area for all the sectors. So that's most of the comments that I can do.
No, that's great, Greg. I see you concur with that one.
Yeah. So I would add, we have a wonderful pipeline of data talent for Google and Amazon, et cetera. It is an extraordinarily difficult challenge, and we find that our data scientists they're interested in really interesting problems, right? So if you can find the right problem that will just get the individual excited, they'll forego the larger corporate environment and stay local. But it is a huge challenge for us all throughout the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Toshihiko, please.
Okay, so thank you for allowing me to participate in this panel. So I'm Toshi Kanayama to represent AIST from Scuba. Well, let me say something about how we can apply the AI technology to SMEs. That is one of our particular concern. And what you have already heard from Yusuke Mori's presentations, so we are preparing a kind of AI platform for everyone to easily utilize the AI technology to empower the robot. And that is particularly important for us to continue sustainable development for local SMEs, and not only for the manufacturing industries, but also for the other sectors, such as the agriculture and also the elderly care. I guess the elderly care should be one of the most important area for the AI robotics should be applied. And for that purpose, we are preparing two different kinds of effort. One is to prepare the platform on which everyone can utilize the AI technology empowered by the database. And that is one thing. Another one is how to deal with the data. And that is also always a concern about us. And but for that purpose, we do not open the raw data, but we will extract some learned data from the raw data to form a kind of database, which can be open to everyone. So by doing these two procedures, and also what is important is to restrict the problems. We should define some particular problems on which everyone can play with. So in doing such kind of definition, that we can relieve the concern about opening of the data. So, and in that sense that we are collecting the collaborators to our platforms. Now, of course, as you may all know that as many data as we collect, our AI ability go much able to do everything. So in that sense, we are soliciting the collaboration, not only within our countries, but also we are soliciting the collaboration between all the ecosystems globally. That is what I like to say to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Toshi. I thought it was very interesting, your presentation. You talked about, or Yusuke talked about this idea of making software and database open on a website. Greg mentioned about the work with AT&T and making data available. I know Emily talked about some work, public research where data is being made more openly available. Is this a major way that we can improve collaboration between our ecosystems? Mia, I see you nodding.
Well, can I add something? And yes, I think so. And as I said, and we should define our situation and problems on which that we can collaborate. That is necessary and conditions on which we can play with.
Thank you, Toshi. Mia, a comment? Not mute. Let me just see if I can. Okay, we'll try. Hopefully, you'll be unmuted in a little while. Brent, I mean, let me just. We talk about data. We talk about decision making. We've talked a lot about AI. Physicians, as you said, a fairly perhaps a fairly conservative crowd, and what about some of the pitfalls for taking away this decision making from the human? How do you convince them of both the benefits, but also, as you said in your presentation, not threatening their livelihoods in the future?
Yeah, there's an interesting program here through Amy called AI for Good, right? And part of the initiative of that is to greater educate on the benefits of AI. AI it's nothing but a tool, really. So the quicker we get beyond the idea that AI is going to make decisions for us versus help us to augment our decisions or come up with greater or more clear data on making better decisions, I think the better. But I think it really starts with healthcare's, at least in Alberta, it's a little sorted. Healthcare funded by the government. Physicians not necessarily trusting the government, so implementation of a new decision-making tool that might be funded by the government, it's a bit of a sordid affair. So I think it starts with that trust and transparency, and then an understanding as to where that decision comes from, where the data comes from, and then trial into decision-making process for the physician.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I could just sorry, would anybody want to jump in, comment on Brent's Emily, maybe I can go to you. You talked a lot about obviously managing, controlling, trying to create a secure end-to-end data value chain. I mean, and you mentioned, I think, this difference between professional industrial data and personal data. Can you say something a little more about that? What are some of the challenges with both types?
Yes, so as I pointed and highlighted in my talk, there is often not a confusion, but industrial data are thought to be the same as personal data, and everybody is believing that tools or platforms or cloud or whatever, AI also algorithms that are good for personal data, and I'm thinking about Amazon, Facebook, or all of these, all of the tools and platforms that these big companies are developing, would be the same and would be also suitable for industrial data. But as mentioned just before, open data or platforms where you could share data between different partners is probably a way to enhance collaboration, but it could be also a break if we don't take care about keeping some privacy somehow, about probably encrypting some kinds of data, about maybe about using specific tools also to deal with the latency we need for this specific kind of data. So it's probably a good opportunity to enhance collaboration between partners, and we are seeing here in our ecosystem where we have a lot of microelectronics companies, and they are willing to share their data, their industrial data. But of course, when it comes to data that include their know-how, secrets, their manufacturing processes, they are very, very sensitive. And for now, we only managed to make them collaborate on, for instance, maintenance data, for instance, on some common equipments that they are share, or for instance, data about pollution they could have an impact on. So it's not at the heart of their business. It's really something outside, and for this it's okay. They are able and they are willing to collaborate. But again, dealing with this industrial data, we have to be aware that there are very specific tools that we need to develop so that we will end up with real collaboration, with real partnerships, and we will be able also to keep privacy and when it's needed. So that's what I wanted to point out. It's that difference between, let's say, IT and OT, if we can say so.
Mia, are you with us? Can we hear you? We can't. I don't think we can hear you. Can somebody? Is anybody can unmute Mia's microphone there? We've got a few questions from the audience. I'd like to just give to a few of you. Greg, you talked about sort of granularity. I mean, what kind of granularity is possible? What kind of granularity makes sense in terms of what you're doing?
Well, the question really is what is the data that you need to be able to make a decision, right? So you can say, in the example I used, right, for climate models, and you can say, well, the temperature is going to rise, so many parts a degree per year. Industry can't use that, right? But if you have the granularity of, well, I talked about AT&T. But we had another collaboration with Pacific Gas and Electric on the West Coast, right? And they're looking at how many days in a row are over 95 degrees. How many days in a row have wind gusts above a certain level, right? And so they think of fire damage or fire risk, if you will, to their infrastructure. And this resiliency area is, right, a sort of non-competitive area where industry is sort of willing to partner with their competitors and other industries that sort of allows the sharing of how to make decisions to make your infrastructure more resilient. So it's an interesting path forward for industry and for developing data sets that are shared amongst competitors.
All right, I unmuted. Sorry, a question for Benoit. So it was very interesting when you were talking about creating this end-to-end value chain and obviously trying to integrate mining into the rest of the value chain. A question: what could the impact of Canadian mining have on the markets for rare materials used? I guess meaning, what kind of resources do you have? I mean, we're very aware that when we talk about battery markets, our resilience in the West, for want of a better word, is limited. Its supplies are fairly constrained to certain regions. So tell us more about your resources, Benoit.
Yeah, but we have a lot of raw materials and in Quebec, and the rare earths that we all need for the battery. I think we have a lot of that in our ground. And as I said, the paradox is that today we are extracting these raw materials, but we are selling it abroad. So the idea is to use these raw materials for maybe our own end-to-end value chain. And that's the main things that we will try to work. But I come back to my comment that I see that it can be difficult, because when you need to attract expertise that you don't have on your territory, that's maybe the big challenge, because if we were not able to do that, we can face the risk that I mentioned. So I heard everyone talking about collaboration, but I think that everyone has also limited resources, a lack of talents, and so on. So we need to choose at one time, so where we put our resources and the energy. And I raised maybe the risk that maybe we won't be able to complete this end-to-end value chain. So That's maybe the paradox I was talking earlier, that I would be curious to see how we would move in the future. Yeah.
I guess you raised an interesting point. I mean, it's been raised. Greg has mentioned it, but this notion that our ecosystems are not necessarily always as resilient as we would like to talent, to the movement of talent. I mean, how do you? And again, if we're looking about, we've talked a lot about data. We know data scientists are in huge demand. Brent, how do you retain your talent in Edmonton? I guess there's this little place called California that could be quite attractive for some of those people.
Oddly, really interesting you say that. We actually produce much more talent than stays in the Edmonton region right now. So we have this talent pipeline of computer engineers and AI experts that largely leave to larger tech centers. Historically, Alberta being an oil and gas center, we're still in a shift for retaining that talent here to work in this environment. So we're great at pumping out talent, and we're in a model of change right now where we're beginning to retain more of that talent as costs in San Francisco or Toronto or Vancouver, as the cost for that talent becomes really expensive. Now companies are looking to tier 2 or tier 3 emerging markets to set up secondary offices or Western offices, and so that's where we see there's an opportunity. But historically, it's been, I hate to use the word brain drain, but it has been to where we kind of lose around 600 graduates every year out of the University of Alberta to other regions who are skilled in STEM.
Thanks, Brent. Anybody else like to pick up on that? Stephen, Toshihiko, how would you manage the talent retention in your regions around these areas?
Well, that is a very important problem, but a serious problem. And so I like to know how other ecosystem is now working on this issue. we don't have any special solutions to this problem, and talent is the most important issue to us.
Yeah. Thank you. I'd like to maybe finish up because we're close to the end of time. Just to finish on again, as we said at the beginning of this webinar, the idea of HLF Connect is very much trying to connect ecosystems. So I'd like to leave it maybe on a word for each of you in terms of where you would like to see collaborations, where you think you've got something to offer. Maybe I could start, Greg, where your area seems, I mean, eminently, obviously somewhat related to which regions in the world that we're talking about. It seems eminently translatable to other areas.
Certainly. So I think the collaboration opportunity is really on the sharing of these databases, right? Many have spoken about using AI tools for various things, but particularly leveraging science, which is messy. Science data tends to not be curated, and trying to use that in a worldwide collaborative fashion to help decision making, at the ecosystem level.
Thank you, Yusuke, Toshihiko. Where do you see some collaborative opportunities from your perspective?
Yeah, even only in 2 hours, I think we have identified a lot of the problems or the technical challenge or non-technical challenge that should be shared in our ecosystem. So I just wanted to continue our discussion more, but after this session, I think we can just put the challenges we want to discuss the deepen for the November's the Good Novels Real event. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusuke.
So let me add 2 short words, and one is that so we are now encouraging the global collaborations by using the national funding. That is one thing, and another thing is that And the global collaboration is one aspect to encourage, to attract the bright talent to our ecosystem and also to our collaborations. So yes, the collaboration is also the tool to attract the talents. That is one thing.
Thank you, Toshi. Emily?
Yes, about collaboration and which topic we should collaborate. So the main topic of our panel discussion was, of course, reinventing and reshoring of industry. But as I mentioned, I think by doing so, we should also take care of leveraging digital transition, but of course, also taking care about using frugal digital tools. And by frugality, and this could be, I think, this could open a lot of opportunities for collaboration, because first, it's a huge problem that we have to face all together, and that we have all to take into account. And by frugality, I mean lowering the energy consumption of digital in all. And also, and this was also part of our discussion in that session, frugality is also on resources or critical materials, because I think we, in no country, there is an amazing amount of all resources that we need to build all the digital component systems that we need. So we really have, it's again a global problem, such as the energy consumption of digital. The resources consumption of digital component system is also a huge and global problem, where we probably have a lot of collaboration opportunities.
You are muted, Robert.
You're mute, Robert.
Thank you very much. Stephen, you had a nice slide at the end on some of the collaboration mapping you've done. Stephen, you may not be with us. Brent,
can you hear me?
Yeah, maybe just say something about some of the collaboration opportunities you see for Edmonton, and what you'd be looking for, or what you're interested in elsewhere.
Yeah, you know what, we've been really great as of late going out to the rest of the world, but I think I'm looking at Benoit right now. It's great that we're going to the rest of the world and we're giving value proposition. However, we have some great opportunities to work province to province. You know, sometimes being in a province 2 or 3 over, you may as well be in the other portion of the world. Canada
in North America, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have small population, but there's a great amount of expertise that we can leverage right here in ensuring that supply chains are consistent and serve other markets throughout different provinces. So I think we need to take a further look at what we can do in Canada to collaborate and innovate in order to take that out to the rest of the world.
I see. Thank you, Brent. I see Benoit nodding. Benoit, I'll leave you with the last word before I wrap up. No, not the last of the last, but the last in collaboration.
Okay, good. No, I think that collaboration is key. That, as we said, and maybe what I can note is that with the lack of talents and resources that we already highlight, maybe I think that sharing results is also the key, so that we can avoid to do 2 or 3 times the same things, and to put the effort in one place and then to share results. Maybe also the key to use with a smart use of the resources, the few resources that we have. Maybe sharing results is also the key.
Great. Thank you very much. And on that note, I'm afraid we've got to leave this first working group session. I'd like to very much thank. I'm very afraid that we've lost a couple of people. In particular, Stephen and Mia. Mia, I wanted to say a word of thanks, because as Mia mentioned earlier, she'll be leaving her current role, and Mia's been a great supporter of the HLF for several years now, and appearing on our steering committee, and indeed, as she mentioned, as part of the Lund delegation hosting us in 2019. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all very much. Greg Morin from Oregon National Lab, Yusuke Mori from the city of Scuba, Toshiko Kanayama from ICE, Emily Vyaznov from CEA, Mia from Ideon, Brent, thank you very much, from Edmonton, Stephen Su from ITRI in Taiwan, and Benoit Balmana from Montreal in Canada. Thank you very much for all of your time, and we look forward to talking to you again soon in the next phase of HLF Connect. Thank you.
Yep, see you in Grenoble. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you, Robert.